We need a feedback loop so you can tell us, A, this person turned into a retainer, or B, this person sucks. And we need to get rid of these types of calls because it's not part of our focus.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Arbeit. Today I have a great guest. We have Anthony Paluzzi from Palo Media. Today we're going to be talking about how to grow revenue quickly and predictably with a pay-per-call agency. First off, thanks so much for joining us here today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Caitlin. I'm looking forward to it.
For people who maybe aren't familiar with you or aren't familiar with your business, can you just kick us off with a little bit of background?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in the pay-per-call space since 2010. Focused on generating phone calls and leads to different types of clients. And I run an agency called Palo Media Group. And since our inception, we focused on generating phone calls, a couple different industries. Right now, we focus in the legal and insurance space. And essentially, we work with law firms or insurance agencies to help drive growth. So whether that be acquiring more retainers, cases, clients in the legal space, or more policies and overall customers in the insurance space. And we do this through affiliate partnerships and media buying that we also do in-house. And so it's a very quick overview of what Palo is and a little bit about who I am.
Awesome. Very cool. We typically work with collection agencies. So I'm myself a little bit newer to getting into like the pay-per-call lead gen side of things. So maybe for anybody else out there who's following along with this and isn't as familiar with that space, could you just kick us off with a little bit on like what specifically pay-per-call agency like typically does, who they typically work with, and how that whole like initiation of working with a business like that typically goes?
Yeah, I love that question. So pay-per-call is focused on the action of phone call. And it sounds obvious, but there are different levels of intent, awareness, and just overall quality when it comes to lead generation online. You can get somebody to fill out a form. You can get somebody to start a chat conversation, or you can get somebody to actually initiate a phone call. And why I like the phone call model is because if somebody is willing to pick up that phone and inquire about your product or service, there's a lot of intent behind that. And so it makes that individual highly qualified to deliver to that end law firm, that end insurance agency, that end whoever, and close them at a much higher rate. And so there are a few different, not a few, actually a lot of different verticals that work well in pay-per-call because they are focused on high ticket sales, or maybe it's a complex product, or maybe it just requires more expertise over the phone. So things like legal, which can include personal injury law firm, social security disability law firm, mass tort types of law firms, really any type of law firm, is you can't really just throw your need into a shopping cart and check out with legal. Insurance is the same way because you need to talk through policy details, or you may need to try and understand what coverage looks like. In addition to that, when you're a client trying to acquire somebody, maybe you want to be able to maximize the amount of revenue you can get from that client appropriately. So you want to get them on the phone to sell them more and upsell them, cross-sell them, different things like that. There's also industries like home services that require a lot of hand-holding for the caller so that you can truly understand what they need and address their issue quickly. If I'm, let's say, a homeowner and my pipes explode and now there's a waterfall hitting me, I'm going to fill out a form online. I need to call somebody quick. Yeah. And then there's different markets like the financial markets, things like that, with debt consolidation, mortgage, et cetera, that also require more hand-holding. So I just went on a tangent. I hope that answered your question.
No, it absolutely did. And I think something really interesting that you started out saying with that is getting that person to make that phone call. It's almost like getting them to like have a little bit of a commitment right off the bat before they're even starting that call. And I think nowadays when we look at marketing, so many people are so heavy on, oh, you have to go digital. You should try and automate it and get them to go through a chat form or something like that. But like you were saying, particularly for like high ticket offers or maybe just things that are a little more complex. So like your example of if your pipes are flooding, you probably don't want to be chatting back and forth with a bot. Yeah, totally makes sense. Some of those scenarios where somebody might be really helpful to go the route for a campaign like that. Going off that point, something that I was curious about for like businesses getting started with this, maybe you have a law firm out there or stick with your example, maybe like a plumbing company, somebody like that. How do you gauge the traffic that they're going to get? Has anybody ever been overwhelmed, or do you set a benchmark of like inbound traffic expectations out of the gates with clients?
Yeah, we'll use a law firm as the example here because there's really two sides to this coin where it's the marketer needs to understand how they approach this. And then the law firm needs to understand how to actually manage this type of traffic. So when you think about a new law firm, maybe that isn't too familiar with marketing or answering phone calls or anything like that, you really need to understand, okay, what's my goal? Because if I have a big call center helping me field a lot of calls, I can take calls from many different channels, such as display, native, Facebook, Google, email, different things like that. Whereas if, let's say, you're a smaller law firm and you have limited staffing capabilities, you need to make sure that you're aligned with a marketer or an agency or your own marketing that is higher intent, because you're not going to be able to answer 200 phone calls in a day. You want to maybe
Right.
answer 5 phone calls, and let's say 2 of those individuals turn into a retainer that day. So you have different levels of intent. And for a law firm in this example, it's really looking at first is, what are my capabilities? Can I actually take calls in, take leads in, and follow up to ensure that my marketing dollars are going to proper use? Or do I need to partner with an agency, shameless plug like Palo, that can help me structure everything where it's, all right, we'll do the call fielding for you, or we'll ensure that it's qualified before it reaches you. And so there's different ways to approach it. But first, it's more, what are my goals as a law firm? Do I need to have high volume of callers coming through to close certain types of cases? Or do I just need to focus on those really prime center cut types of cases that come from, let's say, a Google search ad? And so I hope that answered your question.
It did. And it opened up something different, which is, if I understood correctly, it sounds like maybe you guys have the ability to even pre-qualify and maybe narrow down the people who are going to get transferred over to those agencies, if I'm understanding correctly. In that case, what's the startup time that it might take for you to work with a new business? Are you guys typically pretty familiar with the use case of maybe somebody, a law agency, or can that be like a longer setup time for somebody who maybe wants more of that vetting before the calls get to them?
Yeah, I mean, for the client side, it's really not that long. I would say between 1 and 2 weeks maximum. It's really around like the comfort level of the client. Because let's say, for example, I'm speaking with a personal injury law firm that wants to talk with potential clients who have been injured in an auto accident. We already have an established program there that allows us to truly understand what a new client would be looking for. And so we already are able to ensure that, all right, we know what you're looking for, Mr. and Mrs. Law Firm. And so here's what we do. Here's what we're going to qualify for. Here's what the cost looks like. And here's what we need from you. And so it's very easy. Essentially, it's just, you just got to make sure that you're ready to answer that phone when we transfer that call to you after we've qualified these individuals. And then in addition to that, we need full feedback. We need a feedback loop so you can tell us, A, this person turned into a retainer, or B, this person sucks and we need to get rid of these types of calls because it's not part of our focus. Very easy if you have something well established and you know what the clients typically look for, like motor vehicle accident. So I would say 1 to 2 weeks maximum in terms of being able to get a client set up.
That's a pretty quick turnaround time then. So somebody could realistically be listening to this and by the end of the month have results. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, like, you're going to have somebody who's trained on the phones, trained in your product. But aside from that, internally at these companies, is there anything that you find maybe like in terms of cleaning up their website or improving their online presence, anything like that, that like you typically recommend that they do before getting involved in one of these campaigns?
That's a good question. So we at Palo, we're performance based. So we grow our own brands internally.
Mm.
And so our brands allow us to control the entire funnel of that customer. So they'll hit our website and they'll hit
Oh,
our call center, and then we'll finally deliver that end result on a shiny platter. So with your question in terms of how we practice things, we actually don't need our clients to essentially have really any online presence. But
oh, okay.
if I was a lawyer and I was looking to start up my practice, I would 100% ensure that I at least have a digital presence. And because law firms are so locally driven in certain areas, you
Mhm.
need to make sure that you're set up for a local touch. So that means having a Google My Business listing, having different types of organic citations like Yelp or even a Bing listing, there with proper reviews in place so that you can actually show that, oh, I have social proof and people want to work with me. And if they're looking for an attorney in this field, I look like a real business. So I would 100% recommend that if, let's say, you're a law firm and you're going to do your own marketing, you need to look at first, how am I structured so that if somebody does see one of my ads and they don't decide to buy, if they find me elsewhere, I
Mm.
continue to instill trust so that maybe they come full circle and maybe they see that, oh, I see there's a review on the Google listing that pushed me over the edge. I want to hire this law firm to help me out. So I totally think that before any type of marketing is started, if it's digital, have a presence online that's well built out first.
Yeah, definitely always recommend having an online presence. I think that can be a great help
Yeah.
to many businesses. As one of the things that I always think about, especially again, we work very heavily in the collection agency side, is we talk a lot about like third party disclosures, compliance, things like that. Are there any concerns about anything like that in terms of passing on those contacts to other businesses as it relates to maybe consent to contact them or anything like that that businesses have to be mindful of when starting one of these campaigns or maybe looking for somebody to work with?
Yeah, no, for sure. When it comes to, let's say, lead generation in the form of somebody filling out a form, I mean, the obvious stuff is TCPA. You need to make sure you're capturing the proper consent on a national level and a state level, because every state also has their own TCPA laws. So that's the easy stuff to just think about first. It's not easy stuff to implement. And I actually believe you had Eric Troutman on, who
Yeah.
is pretty much the go-to, knows everything about that. But that's kind of step number one. And then in addition to that, let's say using law firms as the example, you also need to make sure that you're adhering to local state bar laws. There may be certain laws within a certain state because every law firm has to have licenses in each state that they operate in. There may be some advertising rules there that you need to ensure
Mm.
that you're adhering to. You're not breaking not only PCPA types of laws, but actual how law firms need to run their business laws. And then lastly, I would say that it's smart to make sure that you're transparent with the user online, that you're not the law firm and that you'll be connecting them with the law firm. That really goes with any industry. If you're a lead generator, performance agency, whatever, and you're using your own brands to drive traffic, not only should you be disclosing that, hey, we're not the plumber, the lawyer, the
Right.
insurance agency, because it's just smart to do, but it's also going to lead to a better consumer experience because that they now know that, "All right, if I fill out this form, then it's not so and so brand reaching out to me. It's this law firm reaching out to me." And so I would say that when it comes to compliance, that's big. Now, with an inbound phone call from Google search, it's very little because they're initiating contact. So yeah, that's pretty much how I approach things.
Well, that makes sense. It's you could go forever down into the compliance rabbit hole. I know you mentioned Eric. I spoke with him a couple weeks back, and I think this was like a big topic at Contact.io last week. But I know there's some proposed laws out right now for potentially changing the landscape of how lead generation companies would basically be able to pass on leads to businesses. As somebody in this space, are there any changes in either in your business or in the companies that you're working with right now that you guys are maybe making to anticipate possible changes coming up in the future?
Yeah. So I would say that with a lot of the changes that like Eric discussed, it's really applying to, I think, what was mislabeled as like a lead farm. But if somebody fills out a form and then that form entry goes to 600 companies, and nothing against that model, but to be honest, it's probably not going to be great for the consumer if they are now getting 200 phone calls, 100 texts, 5,000 emails. They're not getting what they originally looked for. I know for myself, if I go through a funnel and I see a product or service that I want to, let me buy it. Let me take the
Yeah.
action to buy it if I've proven myself. So in terms of like that, I definitely see that there's most likely going to be more consumer focused changes that pretty much just say either, hey, you can't sell to multiple people, or you need to disclose where this lead is going to. And this is why I like calls better, because I think the inbound call, we call it a technique, is definitely going
Yeah.
to be better for the consumer because they're choosing who they want to talk to. So in terms of how we are looking at those changes, we look at it as, all right, one, we need to ensure that we're still very call focused. If we're going to get a lead in, we're going to be that end client that cleans that lead up. and delivers it to one individual, whether it be a law firm, insurance agency, et cetera. We also are looking at focusing more on inbound call generation because that's easy. You don't need to do anything there other than route that call to the appropriate place. And then lastly, we look at it as we need to be as close to the data or the marketing as possible. So if we're going to run this marketing internally, that's easy. We're running the marketing. So we want to make sure we do more of that. Or if we're going to partner with an affiliate, we're going to make sure they're the first party affiliate. It's not brokered and diluted further and further down, because then we don't have transparency into where this call comes from. So first party marketers that also run their own ads, not brokered out to someone else. And then also having more in-house is our strategy to ensure that we not only have the ability to just avoid these compliance changes, but also have the ability to control more and grow.
Makes sense. To wrap up this entire conversation that we've had, overall, it sounds like it's a pretty quick turnaround that somebody can get started with this, start seeing results. Any final thoughts on how a business out there, maybe who's looking at pay-per-call for the first time and wants to get started, they're just not quite convinced yet?
Yeah. So pay-per-call, the key word there is call. And so I would first look at, is my business equipped to take 100 calls tomorrow? And if not, and obviously that number can adjust based on the industry you're in, but is my business equipped to take in X amount of calls tomorrow? If not, why? What do I need to do there? Okay, I don't have a phone routing system. Let me get a phone routing system. I don't have staff to pick up the call. If I have the budget there, do I need to get, let's say, a paralegal on the phone? Or do I need to get more licensed insurance agents on the phone? And then if I truly believe that, okay, at least I have the infrastructure in place to literally answer a phone call properly, well, now how am I going to get that phone to ring? Whether that be my own internal marketing efforts with Google, Facebook, whatever, or do I need to go out there and find which agencies are doing it the best? And so that literally just comes down to educating yourself. You can Google legal pay-per-call generation, legal lead generation, and see who's out there and what they're doing and how it applies to your business. You can also reach out to some agencies that specialize in it. So like Palo potentially. I'm done plugging myself, but it's really around, first, do I have the infrastructure? Second, what do I want to do to feed that infrastructure? And then third, it's really just executing in terms of, all right, now that I have everything, how do I ensure that I have goals set around this? Are my KPIs certain amount of calls per day, certain amount of closes per day, certain amount of spend per month? And then building those three things together allows you to really look at, all right, cool. I have an operation right now that looks like it's primed to take phone calls in and grow my business. So yeah, first it's more, let's look internally. Are we primed and equipped to actually take a phone call? And then where we're going to get those phone calls from, and then setting up measurements to know that everything is operating properly. So that's how I would approach it if I was, let's say, a new business trying to break into pay-per-call.
No, I think it's a great strategy that you laid out there. I think to me, what the really important piece in there was having kind of KPIs or an end goal around what you're looking to get out of it. I think is, of course, really important when you're taking on a new project, but yeah, definitely going in with your set plan of what you're hoping to get out of it. But with that said, it has been super interesting learning a little more about this space today from you. But I know you said that you didn't want to plug anymore, but I'm going to have you plug one more time. So for people who have listened, your message has resonated with them, where can people find you online and possibly connect to get more information?
Yeah, this will be the last plug. Yeah, they can reach out to me on email. My email is anthony@palomediagroup.com, and visit our website and fill out the form, palomediagroup.com. My background isn't as cool as Caitlin, so if you get on a Zoom with me, I apologize. And you can follow me on LinkedIn, Anthony Paluzzi, as well, if you want to reach out there. I'm sure there'll be something posted somewhere about more ways to reach out to me. If you want to visit me, I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. You got to find me though. So there's so yeah, but yeah, I'm happy to talk with anyone, regardless if we can help them or if we can help, if we can't or can help them. So I always love talking about this.
Awesome. Anthony, it has been a pleasure. We'll put all the links for how people can reach you down in the descriptions, the comments, all that good stuff. Thank you again for coming on today. And with that said, that has been our episode of Arbeit.